Hello, and welcome to the interim series. While I attempt to fix what is insufficient with my computer before getting back into National Busways West Scotland. So I thought, let's take a bit of a break from City Bus Manager, but not really. And welcome to the Windows 11 desktop. You are now in my PC's living room, so to speak, because it's time to make an livery. So, let's open up the workshop, and let's find a bus. Let's find a bus. If I could spell Yutong, that would be nice, because I am going to do a repaint for the Yutong E10. Which, if you're familiar with the Yutong E10, you'll know they're like a nice, electric, smallish, nice little single deck bus, perfect for like town runs and stuff. And their Yutong's a pretty decent bus, as it has to be said. So this mod is by Mr. Chips, who has a link to all of their repaint templates in the description. Let's open up the file, and let's find it. Is it going to be a PDN? Which will be a paint.net file? I think it is. Well, there's E10. That was last updated in November 2023. And the PSD was also last updated in November 2023. So let's take the PSD, which is the Photoshop file. However, the paint.net file will work in a similar way. However, I have Photoshop and I want to use Photoshop. So, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that and put it in my folders where I organize everything. Oh, I already have an E10. Perfect. Let's open the template, shall we? We're now opening the template for the Yutong E10 in Adobe Photoshop. If you don't have the Adobe suite, then you can use paint.net. That is the other standard one that people use. And for that you will want to download from the PDN folder rather than the PSD folder. PDN and PSD are just what the different file formats are called. They're just what the different file formats are called. So, this is your repaint template. And broadly, like, if you're gonna do your repaint all in here, then you can, like, pick a color. This is like a red. This is a red. You can make it red. And the template is set up such that it preserves all the details, like the panel lines, and it masks off where the windows are, so that you can just paint your bus. Let's move that to normal. There we go. So you can just paint your bus. You can make it all red. Isn't that nice? And now the bus is red. Or, well, it's red on this side. But you can, and if you want to know how to make a design in Photoshop, go to a Photoshop tutorial. This is a City Bus Manager tutorial, not a Photoshop tutorial. I'm just going to double check that everything's running fine here. Good. Wait, is it? Yes, perfect. So, and also this is a tutorial showing how, also to show how I make the City Bus Manager liveries, and it's different than what you might expect. So, what I do involves some what I call kit bashing, which is basically where I modify the template so that it'll work outside of Photoshop. And what I do there is in the case of this template, I think I'm going to take the tolerance up to 99 on the Magic Wand tool. And I'm just going to do that. But I'm actually going to take the tolerance down, and I can turn contiguous off, and turn the tolerance down to like 95. There we go. So now we should have the panel lines all pretty much preserved. There we go. So now if I delete that, okay, so what I want to do is I want to right click and go to select inverse. If you're doing this in paint.net, that will be Control I. Or is it Shift I? It's something I. Then I'm going to hit delete, and that's deleted all of that. Now we have just the very bare bones of this. I'm going to export this, not save it, export it, because we only need this once. Storage F, let's go to City Bus Manager Repaint, back to templates, and you'll see I have this extra folder here called PNG for Adobe Illustrator. And this is going to be the YM type. I name my templates after the vehicle type codes that I give them in game. They are actually useful, to me at least. So, right, where was I going? I was going over here. So, then I go into this set of folders here. We have National Bus Company Landor, which is for the Landor scheme vehicles. See the early episode, most of the West Scotland series for that. We have National Busways Express, see like the Dorset Limited, and stuff like that on South Coast. National Busways Morse, see most of South Coast for that. It's the one with the rounded Morse code stuff and the rounded gradient steps. Mose 2, that's not spelt right, but it doesn't matter because it's just for me. That is the one that we recently introduced on South Coast with the lines and the styling and the everything going everywhere. And then New Image is the most recent one that I've introduced to the series. See the more recent episodes of West Scotland for that. So, this is a modern bus. We're going to put Morse 2 on it. So let's get a solo bus, which is what the game calls regular single deck buses. And I'm going to get the most recent one of these, which is the MMC type, or the EL MMC type, which is a private mod. There's new versions of the MMC. They're currently private. I don't know when they're going to come out. I don't know if they're going to come out, because the case with a lot of these private mods is sometimes they never get released. So, but I'm opening this just so that I have the pattern. And this is opened up in Adobe Illustrator. Now, Adobe Illustrator is a vector graphics software, whereas Photoshop is a bitmap graphics software. The difference between vector and bitmap software is that in bitmap software, you're dealing with individual pixels, and every pixel stands on its own. So, you know, your image is a fixed size based on the number of pixels that it contains. And you're working with individual pixels. Every single pixel can be a different color than the ones next to it, which is great. But it makes file sizes quite large, and it makes working with sort of hard edges and graphic designy type things a little bit more difficult. So what you want for that is a vector software, where instead of dealing with pixels that we can group together and form things that look like shapes, we're actually dealing with shapes. And these shapes are defined by a bunch of complicated maths. And ultimately you don't need to understand any of that. What you need to understand most is that those shapes come together to form, or is that maths comes together to form shapes. And the wonderful thing about maths is that it can scale infinitely. So you can make a vector graphic infinitely small and infinitely big without losing any quality. There are caveats to that, you know, you might have to like touch up alignments and stuff, but assuming everything's perfectly aligned and snapped and everything's working, then you can make a vector graphic as big or small as you like without losing any quality. Right, so I'm just going to fiddle with Illustrator to get it how I want it to be, and I'm going to go into here, go back to Repaint, Templates, PNG for Adobe Illustrator, which, and this is where we use this template again. Let's bring that up here, and we will lock that layer. That is just a guide. This is a stencil, if you will. And it's kind of how it works in the game as well. It's a stencil. So, yes, I'm finally going to stop teasing everyone. I'm finally going to stop teasing you all. I will be showing off London Country next week. So, this is going to be a London Country livery. So I'm going to take this livery from the MMC, and I'm going to scale it as is. I like how it's all looking. So, I have my shapes. Again, if you want to know how to use Adobe Illustrator, look up how to use Adobe Illustrator. This is not about how to use the software, it's about how to make bus livery designs. Because ultimately anyone can learn how to use software. Learning how to design stuff, now that's the hard part. That should be fine. So, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to resize this. There we go. And then I'm going to resize this so that it goes all the way to the front. There we go. So yeah, don't worry about how imperfect this looks right now. This looks really messy, quite frankly. And in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this, and I'm just going to save. I'm going to export this again. So this is going to be ymtype_2, just to keep things organized and keep them next to each other. And what this will do is allow me to see the shapes on the bus a little bit better. Where this can show me panel lines, the second version will show me shapes. So, if I put that there we go. That's all perfectly lined up, and then I just make it really transparent so that it's just about there but not quite. There you go, I'll run it there, because that way I can see shapes more. That's exactly what I want it for, just to see shapes. And right, so that's there. So we have on layer 2 here the starts of our livery. Now, the question comes, I've just copied and pasted this over from the MMC, but it's clear that these slashes, these gradient steps, are way too far back. You can see how the front of the bus is this light green, and it goes really far back, and the back of the bus is this darker green, and it's just sort of hanging on there. It's not got much room. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move these forward. And I'm probably going to move them forward such that this angle here on the front gradient step lines up with this window seam here. And that should be plenty. Then I'm just going to make it all nice and tidy, like that. And then I'm going to move this to make it all tidy like that. Perfect. You can zoom in as far as you want with this vector software. This is zoomed in to 12,750%, which is a lot. But out here, because it's a 4K texture and I'm using a 1080p screen, it's only 25% to look here. So now, the next thing is I need to flip this. Like so. And I'm going to send this like that. And line that up with the front just so. Perfect. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing again. So we know that we want something that we can't get. The problem with the Yutong is that the windows aren't the same on either side, which is very annoying. But it's fine, I have a trick up my sleeve for that, don't worry. The trick up my sleeve is simply that I'm going to cut this back and do this as two separate bits. And so, there we go. Do that. Flip it. Bring it back. And just get it lined up. Now, if I do that, that should be perfectly lined up. Now it is. And that seems to be pretty good. Yes. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. That seems good anyway. You can tell I'm not super confident. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep this back there. There we go. Yeah, I was going to go back there. And then I'm going to get to the back. So the back of the bus, fairly easy. Because the back of the bus in Morse 2, if you're aware, is just one colour. So let's get that lined up there. And lined up on the corner there. Perfect. So that is now a square that perfectly surrounds the back end of the bus, which means placing stuff on the back end of the bus will be very easy indeed. And we can do the same on the front. By putting that up there. And aligning that just so. So now we have our, well, most of our bus. The next thing that we want, and I'm not sure how to make this look at all pretty, but what I think I'm going to do is just a bit of a slab of the colour. So I think this is the front. I'm going to put that there. And we're going to go straight up. Make it the full width. And go straight out. Make it the full thing. There we go. And then the same at the back. This improves the sort of continuity of your design between the bottom, or between the sides of the bus and the top of the bus. Even if you want the top of your bus to be a slightly different colour, you know, you'll probably be aware that I paint the roofs of all of my buses white. But having that continuity there just makes the bus look a whole lot nicer. Like more attention's been paid to it, which is, you know, as a designer, I think very important. That's another thing. I'm coming at this with the experience of a graphic designer. I'm not just some rando. My degree was expensive, guys. But this is your core color scheme. These are the base colors of the bus. Everything else is on top of these. So we can lock this layer, add a new one, and start adding our stickers. And who doesn't love stick? Oh, I'm not done actually. Because of course, National Busways, we have our contrasty front end. So, I'm going to bring this back. And I'm going to remove that so that it's even easier to see. And I'm going to use a pen tool. I'll do it all on this layer for now. In fact, I will do it on this layer because it will stay on this layer. So I'll put a dot there. And I will put a dot there. Now, I don't know where I'm looking because the opacity on layer 3 is not enough. But that line is now here forever. We don't need to worry about losing that line. So what I can do is I can up the opacity like that. I can draw. Where's my pen tool? There it is. Pick up where I left off. So I want the line to go to like there. Then I want another line to go to about there. Then I want to draw another line across. To do that, I'm holding Control. Then I want another line to go down there, and another line to go down there. Perfect. Now we have a shape. But we're not done, because this shape is a little bit more complex than that. It has a little bit of a thing there, and it's a little bit more curved there, and a little bit more curved there. These lines are also not perfectly straight. The thing with the Yutong E series is that it is quite a fussy design. It really doesn't want to give you a day off. A lot of people don't like the U series front end, but for the reason, like for one reason alone, and that one reason being that it is a less fussy design, I prefer the U series front end. You know, as a designer, I see designing a livery for a U series bus as being so much easier than for an E series bus. He says designing a livery for an E series bus quite happily. So now what I'm doing is I'm going in with the point selector tool, or direct selection as Illustrator calls it. I call it point selector. I don't know where I got that term from. It's just what I call it. So now, I think my shapes are roughly correct. So I'm going to go into layer 3, I'm going to click it, and I'm going to send the opacity down. And that seems about okay. Perfect. That is our front end. Contrasted. Done. Now we can move on to details. And the most important detail on any bus is not the branding, it's this down here. Your legals. Your legal lettering should always be on your offside, or not on your offside, on your near side. I put mine behind the rear wheel arch, it just fits nicely there. But I've seen buses that have it up here, I've seen buses that have it here. I've seen buses that have it like in the middle. You can kind of put it wherever you want on the near side as far as I'm aware. As long as it's on the near side and it's relatively legible. This is probably bigger than it has to be. Stay on that layer. Now, the next thing I want is this. This is the lower side design for Capital Country. And I think that is the correct way round. Yes, it should lead with the it should lead with the dash. I always get confused with Capital Country over whether it should lead with the dot or the dash, because it is dash dot dash dot, and I forget sometimes if it's dash dot dash dot or dot dash dot dash. But I got it right this time, which is good. So what I want is that to go there. Oh dear. Right. Oh, I was adjusting height, not coordinate. There you go. There you go. Now that's fixed. So, let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and shift that so that this corner here, which is the top right edge there down to the bottom, is just in the corner of this wheel arch. That way they fit together, but not too tight. And let's extend these lines all the way through the back, and hopefully, if this template's been well made, they should line up. By the time we put it in the game, we'll see how that looks. So now let's grab all of this, flip it, and this is where sometimes my Morse code gets back to front. It's through not being vigilant when flipping it. Let's... There we go. There you go. And I like to send it 50 pixels down, given that it's 64 pixels tall. That's good. Then let's just cut these edges down using the direct select tool. Perfect. Then, the way you fix your Morse code, well, the way you fix something that's meant to be the other way around, is you put the reference point there, your 9 squares there, you can, that's not a static icon, you can change your reference point, which will change these coordinates, and you flip it, like that, so it's leading with the dash, not the dot. Now I'm going to take this, copy that, and I'm going to paste that in there. Very nice. But I'm going to go back to this layer, and I'm going to copy the X center, which is the center horizontally, so that will be nicely centered in there. But I'm not going to copy the Y center, because this panel is sort of taken up by the Yutong logo, so we only actually have this space to work in. So as long as it's centered in there, I'm relatively happy, and that was too far up. I think only 3 pixels is needed here, and 25 pixels is a decent size. One of my lecturers at university had a mantra that was, space is an active element in graphic design, which basically means leave room around things. If you consciously leave room around things, let your things breathe, it will look so much more professional. It'll look so much better if you do that. See, that I made it 10 pixels taller and scaled its width proportionally. That's what that chain icon there means. And it just doesn't look, you know, it's pushing. It's trying to burst out of this holding shape. It's just too big. So if I send that back down to 25, it can breathe again. So, that is that part done. Next, I'm going to think, what do I do about that? So what I'm going to do about that is I'm going to look up a Yutong E10. There you go, Yutong E10. What do these things look like? And I specifically want to find a picture of the rear end. That's a Russian one, I think. And it's not the same. Okay, if I specifically search for rear, we have... I'd like to see them try put an E10 on the 74. Yes, the rear end of a Yutong E10. There's not many pictures of that, funnily enough. But here we are. So yes, it's not that particularly deep in set. So I'm not too minded to have that be its own, like to contrast that. If I was to contrast that, I'd make it black so that it so that it was the same as this window. You know, the black glass around the window, even. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this from there, and I put that there, and as you can see, it's not happy. But again, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to find the X center, or the horizontal center, and that's pasted onto the wrong layer. Every digital artist has just freaked out on my behalf, but it's fine. All I need to do is that, and everything is fixed. Right, so that is now centered. I'm going to put that there, and I'm going to say that goes there, and I'm going to put it up 1, 2, 3. Actually, you know what? I'm going to put it there, and I'm going to scale it up to 85 so that it can straddle this, you know, it can straddle the little line in the body there, which I'm going to conveniently ignore, and that's going to be fine. There we go. That's good. That is very nice, and we want that to say 502. There we go. So that is all of that done. Now, we need to get to the stuff above the windows as well. So I'm going to tackle the near side first, and put that here. So again, I'm going to engage in my practice of tidying up everything. Because remember, this thing can work to such a high degree of precision that the pixel stops mattering. So I'm going to line that up with this darkest line of shadow here, and the bottom is coming up against this black area, which will give the type enough space to breathe underneath it. Then I'm going to look over here, I'm going to grab all of these points and just drag them forward. And I'm going to just put that there. There you go, that's good enough. Then I'm not going to do that. I'm going to select the whole shape, like that. Then I'm going to do that. Flip it. Whoa, what? You can't just flip text. Yes, you can. Well, you can't, but you can flip the text back, so it's fine. Text is incredibly easy to flip. Don't be scared of it. And it doesn't need to be perfectly symmetrical, because not every template is perfectly symmetrical. And to flip text, all you need to do is put your reference point in the middle and flip it. It's really that simple. Don't be scared. And then these are also the wrong way around, because you want to be leading with the dash for dash dot dash dot dot dot. You want it to be dash dot dash dot dot dot, not dot 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 dash dot dash. And now it's leading with the dash. That is almost it. We're not done yet. We're not done yet. Let's grab this and go back to layer 2, find this, and we want this time the Y center, the vertical center, because we want to make sure that it's centered along the width of the bus. And we'll put that there. That's nice. It's even a good size. A lot of the time I find I have to end up... a lot of the time I find I'm constantly adjusting the size. I'm just going to make that 175 to make that a nicer number. There we go. Easy. And this fleet is already in situ. I just haven't made the livery for it until now. It is the YM type based at Stevenage. And there is one thing I've forgotten from the base layer that I always forget, and that is the roof. It's not actually white. It's very, very light grey. Because of just the way that City Bus Manager treats lighting. The light grey is a more realistic white than white itself. You'll find this a lot with City Bus Manager. It treats colours in a slightly weird way, but once you learn how it does it, it's not that hard to work around at all. You just need to make your reds more red. You can afford to dial back on your greens, and you need to generally use slightly darker colours. So just take a little bit of the brightness off. If you're using hue, saturation and brightness, which I use too much. I'm a graphic designer, I should be using RGB and hex, but it's a guilty habit. Anyway, that, if I get rid of this layer and put that back, we can now see what all the colours look like. The shapes aren't as good, but the colours are better. And this is kind of it. So what I do is I go back here and just check for anything I've missed. So let's check against DMMC. What do we have? We have our base 4 shades of green. We have our base 4 shades of green. Good. Apologies. We have our 3 lines with our Morse code on the sides, with the dash leading. We have our 3 lines on the side with our dash leading. Perfect. We have our markings up here. For this set of Morse code, again, the dash is leading, and it should say country, and it should be the correct way around. Yes, dash is leading. Country's correct way around, and the dash is leading. Remember, we read from the left to the right in English. It's a fact that designers we should really keep reminding ourselves that, because it's easy to just take it for granted and do something completely wrong, or just do something completely inappropriate. So that, I don't know what these are. Hopefully nothing huge. Although I fear that they're like this bit and that bit, but they might be indicators and stuff. Oh yeah, they are. Like that oval there, probably that. This circle might be an indicator. It might be something. But again, if I'm unsure, or what have I done? I've gotten rid of my workspace. There we go. Got it back. I can never remember what I click to make it get rid of the workspace. It's very annoying. But let's have a look at this. Let's have a look at the Yutong E10. And if I can get a nice picture of an offside of a British Yutong E10, that is the pre-production one. I'm not so interested in that. However, this is a production one, and I'm confused because it doesn't have those circles. Is it based on a later E10? That's a render for the Flightline E10s that, who are getting those? It's White Bus, isn't it? Yeah. But I've just seen this is an NCT one. You can, very iconic livery there on the NCT, that swoop. So if I look for an NCT Yutong E10, I might be able to find what's going on, and I still can't find what's going on. This is great. But it might be the case that this template has been somewhat copy-pasted from the Yutong E12. So, even then, I have no idea what's going on. So, I'm going to pretend that it doesn't exist for now. And, yeah, this is how you design a bus livery. So, broad things to keep in mind when you're designing a bus livery is pay attention to your panel lines and where your windows line up and what shapes the bus has. And don't work against them, work with them. So I've not painted the front of, I've not painted a big rectangle on the front of this bus. I've painted this specific panel. And that's going to look so much better because it respects the lines that this bus has had designed into it from day one. And I've not put any big junctions of lines on these panels. This is a bit close, but it's not going to be as extreme as it looks in game. Or it's not going to be as extreme in game as it looks here. Because of just how janky this is as a template. So, and that goes the same for these tail lights. That's fine. And I know you're looking at me breaking the rule I'm about to say, but I would stray away from the sharp diagonal. Because the sharp diagonal is a hallmark of a designer called Ray Stenning. He is the guy behind Best Impressions. He designed Flightline, and you can see it's got that sharp diagonal. He also did First Urban. He also did that. That's also his work. It's exactly the same shapes here, actually. He also did the first Ultramarine, is it called? But you can see that strong diagonals in here as well. He's done work for Transdev. Let's get the Which Way livery. I love the Which Way livery, but again, you've got that really strong diagonal slash. That is a hallmark of Stenning designs. And if you can come up with something that's not this, then it'll be more ownable. You can more confidently say that is your design, and you can be happy with it. You can be happy with a strong diagonal. I have a strong diagonal here, but add your own flavor to it. Where let's go to what was the Valley Line? They were the Renowns. Again, they have this strong diagonal on them. But the thing that you'll notice with these very iconic Stenning designs is that they only have one. Here, I have three. But it's in like a it's in a tasteful sort of way. It's not just I've put lots of diagonals on there for no reason. It's a gradient. It's a stepped gradient. And I put the step gradient in back in the Morse 1 days. So that is a National Busways thing that I have modernized, rather than a Ray Stenning thing that I have copied. So, this is done as a livery. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Control E. I'm going to export it to Capital Country. And I'm going to call it YM type ASG. And I'm going to use artboards. And that saved it as a PNG. Everything that I didn't put a color over, that was shown as pure white on this artboard, is transparent on the PNG. So we'll see how that looks. So let's... Ooh, nope. Let's go over here. CBM repaints, and Capital Country, YM type Stevenage. Why do I keep wanting to say Singapore? And then let's move that to the bottom. I think that looks very nice. But here in Photoshop you can see that there have been some slight errors. So this row of pixels here is not happy. That's not been painted. That row hasn't been painted. So broadly I just want to make it a bit bigger, but we just want to catch all of our little errors here, like that little top's not been got. This looks fine, apart from the front bit there. That's also fine, we can fix that. And this is fine apart from that, and it's fine. So basically everything needs to be made just a little bit bigger, but that's fine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make it 4 pixels bigger. Boom. Made no difference. But it's made it a whole lot easier to work with. So I'm going to do the same here. Just everything. Ooh, no. Everything's just going to go bigger. And yeah, we forgot this top bit. So I'm just going to extend that out. What else was there? So I've dealt with that. I've dealt with this. I've dealt with that. I've not dealt with that yet. There you go. Then let's go over to this end. Nothing. Nothing. And that needed to be a little bit longer as well. Perfect. That is that. Then I go to YM type Stevenage. I nearly said Singapore again. And let's delete that. Make the same old tabbing mistake. Realize that it's not happy about something. Fix it. And go, you know what? I think that looks really, really nice. That's fine. It's on the roof, and this is an external garage, so it really doesn't matter. So, what you do now is you export this. Ctrl-Alt-Shift-W is the default command. Don't ask me why. It's stupid. Let's export that. Perfect. And then the big thing that I do is I save this, the Illustrator file, so that I can come back to it if I get these type of buses on a different save. So eBus, because it uses the eBus DLC, YM type. Perfect. There we go. Don't need to save that. That's fine. So now, let's go into City Bus Manager, and I will see you at the Stevenage garage. And we are now here at the Stevenage garage with Capital Country Busways. And let's take YM1 and take it into the paint shop to apply the livery we've just made, and hopefully it doesn't look too bad. So, there it is, the YM type SG.png. And there it is. So, the headlight surrounds are white, which is not perfect, but I can fix that. But at the same time, it's the headlight surrounds. They're really small detail. And they kind of go with the, like, you know, the colored stuff. And this alignment here, that's almost spot on. It's pretty good. This is not great. This is deeper than I thought it was going to be, which is not fun. But oh well. These are the things that we find out when we make liveries for buses. This is how, well, that was how to make a livery for City Bus Manager the way that I do it. So, I will get all of these repainted, and I will see you next week for the first real look at Capital Country Busways. Bye bye.